Welcome everyone to Unloose the Goose. I'm like mixing the audio at the same time as doing this, so I can't hear Neethi if she talks right now because when we go on YouTube it starts talking. I don't want you to get an echo. This is episode 45 of Unloose the Goose, and we have an interesting little variety show. I've got Neethi Bali on. Wave.
Can I talk now?
Yeah, you can talk. Oh, they would have heard you. I just wouldn't have heard you because I didn't want them to have to hear echo me talking in the background. And then I understand that Xavier Hawk will pop in late as usual. He likes to pop in late on us. And we might even get a spot jump in from Sal the Agorist, who will be, he's in a meeting until I think 4:30 or something. So if he wants to pop in, he can. It'll be a fun day. We decided to do a bit of a variety show today. But before we jump into that, Neethi, will you tell us what new is going on in your life this week? Or is there anything exciting going on where you are?
I think that you mean, what am I working on all the time? Because it's
Sure.
Okay. What's going on in my life right now? We're upfitting this space. We just, after we were at Rogue, I feel excited because I feel very connected to you and to Tennessee now.
That's great.
So I will say that. Oh, look, X is coming in.
Yeah, X is coming on.
I'm actually really excited because I feel connected to Tennessee in ways I wasn't before. So I'm super excited about that. I have some new clients from there that I'm coaching, and it's really fun because I get to connect them with your friends for food. So
yeah,
that's cool too.
It's really great. Our networks came together.
Huh?
I said it's really great. Our networks have come together.
It's super exciting. I love it. And I'm excited. I enjoyed, meeting these new farmers and, having conversations with them about what they're doing and how I'd like to see them working with some of my clients. And they seem to be excited about that. So it's great. I mean, it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, what's new at the Holler Homestead is we have an open house on Saturday where the Holler neighbors are just going to do what we do. And people can come check it out. We'll put out finger foods for lunch. I'm pretty sure I'm going to can some pickles or some pickled beets. And we're processing some chickens in the morning because we have to. It's like that time. But my pig, she's close. She's really close to giving birth. First time we've ever had pig birth on the property, so we have no idea what we're doing. And Murphy's Law says she's either going to give birth on Saturday when everybody's here, because then it'll just be extra levels of crazy, or next weekend when I go out of town for a day. So we don't know which one it'll be, but there's lots of us around. Xavier, I'm just going around before we jump into a random set of topics today and asking Gaggle members, what's new in your life? What is new in Xavier Hawk's life?
Wow. So a lot. We are working on a smart city project in Miami. This just sort of unfolded in the last week and a half. And I'm not going to tell you the sources of the funding, but there's a lot going on from both sides of the aisles. And it's an exciting opportunity and project, and then also an innovation center in Miami. So if you guys don't know, Miami has sort of become the new San Francisco in terms of tech development, and especially like in crypto. The mayor of Miami is a super crypto savvy individual, and they want to do some really cool things with Firon doing infrastructure for the county. So we got these like three things that's like all just sort of popped up. And we've raised a whole bunch of money to make all of this kind of happen. And so it's just like the winds are at our sails, and I'm very, very excited for Firon and for, just what the new world can look like in terms of accountability, which I'm very excited about.
Awesome. Well, I was talking to Neethi before we started today, and there are a couple of things I wanted to cover on today's show. And one is communicating hard concepts or freedom to people who are not feeling particularly open to it. Now, Xavier, I know you talked about this once with John Bush, but we didn't have the female perspective on that. So now we're going to double woman you today.
All right, let's do it.
Like that will woman you. So let's start down the path. When Neethi, when you run across somebody who's maybe resistant to some of the ideas you have, and in your case, a lot of your ideas are centered around whole food and not participating in the commercial systems and not supporting what's happened to our medical system, which can sound conspiratorial when we start talking about it, right? And people go, bah. How do you reach people despite defenses that come up? What are some things that you do when you see it happening?
Well, first of all, I don't try to convince people of anything. So I'm listening a lot, you know. I'm listening to where they're coming from, and you know, they're usually authentically, genuinely correct for being where they're at, you know, at that moment. And so I guess I need an example, Nicole, because like, you know, depending on which way they come, I'm trying to think if there's something I could think of right off the top. Like right now, I had somebody this week actually.
Yeah.
You know, there's a husband and wife, and the husband wants my help. The wife does the cooking in the house. She feels like I'm trying to kill him because I'm trying to take him off of vegetables.
Whoa.
You know, and off of grain. Sorry?
Crazy talk.
I know.
Yeah.
And she's just like, how's, you know, he can't just not eat, you know, vegetables. Oh my gosh. I've been trying to get him to eat vegetables. And you just told him he's not supposed to eat vegetables. And so, you know, but also he is being threatened with gallbladder removal, and he doesn't want to lose his gallbladder. And I just happen to know that we can flush out the stones, and I know that if you let nature operate in the way that nature's supposed to operate, it works. You know, but so, you know, she's very concerned. She's genuinely concerned for his health. And, you know, I told her, I said, you know, I understand. I do. I mean, you know, all the medical professionals that we've trusted with, you know, I mean, they're the professionals, you know, and I'm just this Indian woman who's crazy running this food church, like, you know. But I said, well, what they're telling him to do isn't working.
Is he needing an all meat diet? Is that what it is? That so? Like Michaela Peterson, Jordan Peterson's daughter, she did the same. You're familiar with that, right? Jack is all about the keto diet, and he's done really well with that. Do you think that showing results for other people would be something that, like, social edification or social what's it called?
I mean, testimony is number one, right? So I told her, I said, well, you could log in on meetrx.com and you can follow the MeetRx podcast and see the thousands of people that are posting every single day.
Yeah.
And there's just this long slew of people. You know, like Jack said last week, he said, or maybe it was the week before, I don't remember which week now, but anyway, one time he said, you know, if you take people off of fat or protein, they will die.
Mm-hmm.
If you take them off of carbs, nothing happens.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true. And, you know, I told her, I said, the cause is the cure in this case. And his gallbladder is being clogged up because he's on like a lot of plants and sugar. And so, yeah, I mean, I said, well, I've been working with people for 12 years and they're all only getting better.
And you know something you do that you may not know that you do? And you read people's body language really well. So, and not everybody knows they do that. I don't know if you do that with purpose or not, but when you're talking to somebody, you will start with the emotional argument first before you drive them to testimony, before you drive them to fact. Mm-hmm. Because some people, when they have an emotion in the way, can't hear the other message, no matter how many charts are put up. And I think about this because we did this at Rogue Food, right? Where the biggest obstacle to people just starting to do what is not morally wrong, which is take wholesome food that they produce and sell it to somebody else, however you call that, for exchange it for donations or whatever that is. The biggest thing we saw was this, these cottage food laws do not compute, or the food church doesn't compute. I don't understand how it works. Well, it's not hard, but what's hard is the fear of negative consequences, and that's in the way of that message coming in. And so what started as a how-to discussion ended up being a lot more about addressing fears, getting over fears. And that's the emotional piece. And I think that's true for other things that we run up against in the freedom world or agorist world, where there's a lot of discussion about how to that's driven by fear of consequences.
We're all very well trained, and we really, really want to do a good job. And we're not really trying to break the rules. I mean, like when I remember when Joel Salatin first told me that I was rogue, and I was like, oh, I guess I am. I didn't know. I wasn't trying to be rogue. Like, if you're going to keep pushing me in corners, I'm just going to keep coming back out and, like pushing back. But especially when what you're trying to do is the correct thing. And that's what I told this woman. I said, I don't want your husband to die. Like, actually, like, I really want him to just not be in pain anymore. And I'm making a lot of bold statements, and they're scary because you've never heard this before. But I mean, he's not the first person I've ever talked to who has a gallbladder problem. And, you might not know this, but these doctors these days are trying to cut everybody's gallbladder out, and it's pretty crazy.
What?
And it's actually terrifying. Oh, I cannot tell you how many, if we were to right now say, hey guys, if you're on this, on our YouTube right now, tell us if you have a gallbladder or not. I would like to see how many people don't have one, because there's a bazillion people. I mean, a lot of people think they can't do anything but be vegan because they've been told by the doctor who cut their gallbladder out that they're not allowed to eat meat anymore or fat, which is a total lie, by the way. Like, if you don't have a gallbladder, you absolutely can, eat only meat, and you need to. But I'm not going to try to argue or convince you or whatever. Like, everybody's finding their way to this if they're unwell, and they're, like, if they try to live and not die, they'll find their way at some point. But yeah, I definitely try to disarm the emotional fear, for sure. I don't want anybody to be scared, and I want people to be confident. And and if you're going to change your lifestyle, it has to be your choice. And the only thing that's interfering with your ability to gain health is you, because there's nobody doing anything to you. Nobody can make anybody do anything to you. Like, I'm not with you in the closet when you're eating the donuts or whatever you're doing, like, and I'm not even, like, nothing's between you and your mouth and your being except for you. So you just get to decide to do that. And that's none of my business. So if you want my help, I'll help you, but it's none of my business. And
yeah. So Xavier, I've watched the genesis of Baseline from your very first episode, which I don't know that you produced that one wildly originally.
No.
It was like this little inside joke you sent out.
Yeah.
And I think what I've seen happen there since you began is you are also using emotional tools to get the message through. Have you ever analyzed it that way? Are you doing that with purpose, or are you doing that naturally?
Yeah, well, both. I think I just accentuated. So I can be very expressive with my face and with emotions and things, and I'm sort of like conveying a lot beyond just the words. I'm conveying my opinion, I'm conveying my judgments, I'm conveying a bunch of different stuff, and people
the NSA got it again. That always happens when he's about to say something really good.
no. We want to know.
What? How'd you get from the no, okay. He'll be back in a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Fine.
found that stories really help.
Yeah.
But if people are completely blocked off to an idea and you tell them a story of how whatever we're talking about can work or has worked or has helped somebody, they come back at you. Like if somebody is set in their way and wants to argue their side and that's all they want to do, they'll come back at you and basically say, well, that's just one example that's not founded in reality. And they try to bring it to the data at that point. Well, that study hasn't been, your studies are never good enough, et cetera. At that point, what I like to do when we're communicating hard concepts or things that people are defensive about is stop.
I just ask questions. I stop.
Yeah.
I don't try to tell people things. I just start asking them questions because honestly, I think they can answer those things for themselves if it's logical, right? So I like to go into logic or push logic by asking questions.
And
Am I back?
Nicole, you do that too, Nicole.
I do like to ask questions that people don't.
You ask good questions, like really good questions.
People aren't always ready to answer the question when you ask it, though. And that's good. So that's the other thing is when you ask a question, if somebody's kind of shifty or if they give you an answer, the answer they give you that moment may not be the answer that comes 3 days from now when it's been bubbling around in their mind, right?
Yeah.
You guys hear me?
Oh, Xavier's back. You were talking to us about the advent of how you started and how you build in, and you were talking about how when you communicate,
I get shut off by
it's body language. So go from there.
Yeah.
And then the NSA shut you right down.
Boom, gone. Jack did this episode on Miyagi Mornings about why we know what we know and why we come to conclusions we do about things that we know, quote unquote. And so, yes, I'm conveying a lot with my articulation and my movement, my eyebrows, all of that. But it's more of like a full body feeling experience. So it's not just conveying the information, but also how I feel about it, what the implications are and how we do it socially, but that they kind of go unnoticed sometimes. So much of communication is nonverbal. So I try to add as much as I can of that in. But going back to what Jack was saying is like, there's so much politicization that people that people don't necessarily think critically about whatever the issue is. They usually go by what the cohort or the group that they associate with thinks and feels, and they default to that position, sometimes not even knowing why. And we have such a politicized environment, and sometimes I think purposefully, that the critical thinking goes out the window. And so to not just add the emotional opinions, but also to hit them with the critical thinking thing. And I think the example that he used, two things. The example that he used was critical race theory, how it's a Trojan horse essentially that's politicized that will teach cultural Marxism to our youth, but that there is actually facts and valid things about racism and institutionalized racism. Like there are literally things that make us an institutionally racist institutions that we have. Some of our, real estate policies, insurance policies, things like that. Mm. And to be able to take a highly politicized thing and stand in the middle, which is the second point, which is what I think we agorists do. There's no antithesis to agorism. It's not like anybody actively wants to be enslaved, right? Like there's no like, hey, we want to be slaves. It's like we either want to be free, and then there's how we do it, right? The left and the right. And so we get to stand in the middle and sort of be like, yeah, actually there's some good to both of these things, right? Like there's some good aspects to being a conservative and being fiscally conservative and wanting to maintain cultural values and sort of like the things that make civilizations prosper. And then there's which is constrictive. And then there's also real good benefits to being expansive and liberal and growing and exploring new things. And it's when we stand in the middle and we're able to be still that we can actually, make sense of what's in the pond. It's like if you're splashing around, to use an analogy that somebody I respect has always used, if you're in a pond and you've dropped your keys, you can't find it by splashing. You got to be still so then you can see down. So I think as agorists, we kind of do that. And we say, okay, there are some aspects to things like critical race theory that are important. And then there are some things that are complete malarkey, right? And then it's the same with like, you know, Republican values. It's like there are some things that are good for that, small state powers, all of this, but then there's some, you know, utter bullshit. So being able to stand in the middle, and it's helped me, you know, my Republican friends think I'm a Democrat, my Democrat friends think I'm a Republican, to be able to sort of stand in the middle and point out the flaws and the benefits to both sides, because then we can bring people together. So not having any politicized, you know, perspective. And so like even in Baseline today, I'm like, you know, F DeSantis for this, if this is really happening. And it's like, I think it's important that we call out both the good and the bad, not just politics, but in decision-making in general, because we tend to get polarized.
I like to point out that just because you believe one thing doesn't mean you believe everything else that is on the official tribal approved list for whatever stereotype you've decided to assign to me, right? Like I have a friend who, whenever I say something remotely freedom oriented, goes on the attack and then calls out me being a libertarian, which I'm not even sure you could call me a libertarian now, but maybe you can. But I definitely was. You know, it was part of my journey. My journey continues. I don't know what I'll be in 2 years.
Right.
And because of that box, just it's all these things I must believe, half of which I don't.
And therefore you have no value anywhere else. Like it's almost as if like, because you've triggered me, right, that now I can't even listen to anything that you say. And there's so much of that triggering, you know, and microaggressions. Bullshit.
It's the blame training, you know, Xavier, the blame training. Like they're trained to find something to blame constantly.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like, you know, why can't we all just learn something from each other? I definitely am changing my mind all the time about things. And I love a robust conversation to be able to learn from someone.
Yeah. I could be wrong. I'm happy to be, you know, I want to find that out.
I'd love to be wrong and find out something better or easier or more powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't understand this limiting belief. It's a false belief, you know, it's a false belief that that they've been trained into because you're not allowed really to be a critical thinker. You're not allowed. Oh, I just made a post actually. You know, I'm always just blocked because I actually started the day today with this thing on my mind where I was like, why are we supposed to, like, we're given a belief that we're supposed to accept, and we're not allowed to, like, as an adult, I'm not allowed to critically think and you know, and come up with my own fair and balanced opinion by gathering information from various sources, because it's not an authoritative, it's not called, what are they calling it, authoritative information or something?
Oh, whatever. Yeah.
Whatever the word is.
As if you can't learn to be really good at something on your own. You have to.
Yeah, Nicole hit it right on the head. You hit it right on the head, Nicole, when you said tribalism. You know, it's like we will default our critical thinking to the flock or the herd. If the majority of the herd believes one thing, then we will, just simply to be accepted. And it comes back down to that whole fear of death, because if you're ostracized from the tribe, then you have to survive on your own and less chance of survival and all of that. And so, you know, people will, and that's what Jack brought up in the Miyagi morning. It was like, why do you think what you think? And it's usually because you want to be accepted by the herd.
And that's very true of libertarians too.
Yeah.
Like they'll fight like cats with each other, but there's also a very strong desire to find the team. And there's a very strong sense of, I finally found people. And to deny that in your nature, even as an agorist, to say, I go my own way, that's not exactly true, right? We do go our own way.
Yeah.
And we look for ways around things, but how happy was Neethi when she found us?
Right.
Oh, wow, I can actually just, like, I'm not going to have this big, long, laborious discussion about eating meat now.
Every
Yeah.
time.
We could just talk about it and have a conversation rather than, because it's uncomfortable when you get into the conversations and it turns into a big old pissing match, right?
Right. And that brings up another good point. Like, not all agorists are sociopaths, right? Where we're contrarian just because it's like, no, we think critically. We're not just trying to do our own thing because we're so goddamn free. It's and that, you know, F everybody. It's like we actually want to belong. We want to be a part of a tribe, a family. Like we get benefits by being able to love actively, right? Not being loved, but by loving. That makes us feel good. And so we need to have people to appreciate in that way. So I think that's an important thing as well, that community.
Tolerance. That
Yeah.
brings me to tolerance, right? So like developing the ability to tolerate, you know, distress or tolerate another person's opinion, you know.
Their egos. You know?
Yeah, I mean, there's no tolerance. Like, we're liquid love. We're just looking for a place to be. And the fact that we, you know, I mean, but only we can give ourselves permission to grant ourselves the authority to decide what's important. And I think right now that's been diminished in everyone as per the institutionalized training. And I think that's what we're trying to shake everybody out of. It's like, I think that's what the agorist, somebody said to me, as an agorist, you're not politically responsible. I said,
I don't know about that. I think if anything, it's
This is my brown look.
Yeah. Furrowed.
We're pushing the politics by not participating. That's a big push.
It's like the depoliticization, whatever, depoliticization of the discussion, right? It's like it's almost like a not charged. It's like a neutral grounding. It reduces the charge and allows us to speak as human beings rather than as a politicized individual who is being pushed around by the charge that's running around.
You know, I was at this conference once and we were talking about when you get in an argument, what happens. And what happens is your perspective is in this box. Mm-hmm. And the person you're arguing with is in that box. That's their perspective. If you want to have a fruitful outcome from that discussion, once you're both in your boxes, the first step is to go to your out of the box place. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that means realize that you've just drawn your box. It's only your box because you drew those lines. If you step out of the box, you may see a solution that's completely not even on the table in either box that works for both people and therefore helps you have shared understanding, increased ability to work with each other and better outcomes. And that's how I see agorists is we go to the out of the box place and say, wait a minute, it doesn't matter if it's legal or not. Is it moral?
Well, right? We're natural creatures. We want to survive. We're not concerned with the 9 to 5, the grind, trying to find a hierarchy in the social stratosphere or whatever, or stratum. Like we're literally natural creatures just trying to survive. So we have a greater tendency to be curious. We actually want to learn. My wife says this all the time. She's like, can you just be curious about something instead of having a position? And that way you might actually learn something, right? And she's right. I think we as a subcategory of humans tend to be more curious because we want to survive. And so we need to figure out the most efficient, effective, and with the highest outcomes of survivability and thriving. And we're willing to hobble it together and piecemeal things and figure out, you know, a creative solution. So like we're more creative and more curious, and that gives us an advantage in arguments because we're not arguing. We're literally trying to find the best solution.
We're trying to win together. Like
right.
we want to win together. And I don't think that we are trying to hurt or harm or win or rule over the other person. We're trying to help them figure out their terrain as well, right? Like also that's the other part of it. Like, you know, we're open to have these discussions because what's going to work for me in my world might not work for any of you. And we have to be able to consider what it is about what I'm doing that is uncomfortable for Nicole or uncomfortable for Xavier. And then we try to see if there's not a way to do it still and, you know, make it a little bit easier for them. And I think that usually there's a way.
Yeah, I 100% like vegetables. That's one of our points of,
Yeah. If you like vegetables, we can at least get along for 5 minutes.
You're hilarious. I actually like them in my mouth. I know how to cook them better than most people. They don't like me. I'm in.
They like me, I think. We'll find out. But
taking a center ground often makes the arrows fly at you from both sides, right?
Yeah.
Like if for instance, in the agorist community,
Often,
right?
Every time.
Yeah. If I say like, hey, like what Jack was saying in terms of critical race theory, if there is a benefit to, and this got me in trouble with some of our geese, right? Like if there is something beneficial to the UN SDG goals, for instance, let's use a hot button word. Like,
oh, good. Get the fan on YouTube. I'm recording. We're fine. We're fine.
Good. But like, it's like what Jack said about critical race theory. There are some actual good things. It's just how do we implement? How do we achieve these goals? It's like the ends don't justify the means. We all want a clean planet. We all want, we want poverty to end. So you would think, oh, we want poverty to end. Let's get everybody paid universal basic income. But that flips so many people out on this side.
Yeah.
But then this side really wants it. And it's like, well, so, it's like walking a fine line in between in the yellow. You've got the red and the blue, and, the third color is yellow, but very few people choose that. They get really polarized, but the yellow path is the radiant path. And if we can find a balanced pathway, then we can find solutions that satisfy the whole system.
I feel like there's a whole rainbow in between, Xavier.
Yeah, probably.
I know I'm just using the primary colors because people, like red and blue is how they divide people, and it's us yellows that need to, it's us yellows that need to be like, hey, wake up, folks! Like you don't need to be so charged. Yeah,
that's a good point, Xavier, about the red and the blue that I didn't even think about.
Well, and it got me to thinking about like the stick in the arm that everybody wants us to have. It doesn't matter that it's this one for this one thing to me. It could be one for anything. It could be for foot fungus.
Yeah.
I'm still going to want to know what the side effects are and etc. before I make a personal decision about if that's going in my body or not. Right? Like I'm recovering from one of those for something else from 20 years ago still that I had a side effect to. And that's what taught me to look for side effects in things when I used to just sort of blindly follow the advice of doctors.
I remember
that. Asking the question. Well, now if you ask a question about this particular one,
you're a racist.
So many people on all sides are all up in my face about you need to do it. You need to do it. You need to do it. I'm like, no, I don't. No, I don't. No, I don't. And I don't know why you care. I'm not out there like I talk about it from time to time, but I'm not going to say yes, I will and lie. Right. But why is that the issue? It just is. And that's one where people just get so charged they can't see beyond this study or that study. And they come at each other and just hurl studies at each other without taking a step back and saying,
when did all this start? I mean, I feel like I've been living in my own little world over here for too long, because I remember a time when nobody would be trying to prove anything with a freaking study. Okay. It would be laughed at. It was laughable. If you were just, because you everybody knew that you can pay anybody to do a study about anything. And
that's just becoming common knowledge in the past year, though. Like for the majority of the herd, like we might be on that shit, but like other people are like just finding that out now.
I'm like so feeling lost, Xavier. I'm like, who believes this crap? I'm not. I mean, I guess somebody was asking me. They were like, "Where's the study for this and that?" And I'm like, dude. I mean.
Does it matter? Like
who cares? Like
studies can give you information, but you need to see what the study is, which means you need to look at it and not the article that summarizes it. And every time when people pile on me to try to convince me to do what I'm not ready to do, and I'm not going to say I'm ready to do it if I'm not ready to do it, they come at me with articles about studies.
Yep.
That they haven't read. They've read the article. Hey, I wanted to bring something out from the YouTube because it's going to fall off my screen. But Bobby Joe says, once you stop legitimizing the government is when you realize you're truly free.
Yeah, we don't give them any power because we don't care. Yeah. That's my shirt, remember?
I think that goes back to your question, the original question, Nicole. It's like, how do you convince somebody who's polarized or really about something like to get them to even consider thinking outside the box? and asking questions. But it's understanding these things that we've just discussed, the polarization, the, just blindly accepting things because the herd does. You have tools in your toolbox. You're not really trying to get them to wake up to one particular issue. You're trying to fundamentally wake them up from their sleep.
Yeah.
That's really it. And when you recognize that, and I think all of us to some degree had awakened to certain understandings about the world that were uncomfortable and tried to convince our families or whatever. And those discussions never went well, especially in the 90s, right? Unless you from a very forward thinking, progressive kind of like family. But I know for me, it was very difficult to say like things like, yeah, 9/11 was an inside job. That kind of like, what, it's immediately the same kind of polarization. Oh, you must be
died, Xavier. A lot of people died. We know them. We know some of those people.
And one life is too many. But the fact is that there was something weird that went on there, whether it's the government or aliens or, something weird.
Where'd the plane go?
And that's really it. It's like the questions, like, well, how do you explain this? How do you explain that? And then, so whatever the subject is, like, did you know that Fauci worked for the Wuhan lab and funded it? Did you know?
Man, when his emails started coming out and people were still not like.
And then it takes somebody like
maybe there was some manipulation here from the beginning.
Okay,
they're never going to change. That's where you walk away. I mean, those I just don't spend time on.
Right.
Like the 9/11 thing, no one in the news said, if this plane hit the building, where are the parts of the plane that's fallen to the ground?
Right.
Did you find pieces of the plane that hit the ground?
Yeah. I mean, it fucking worked for Plato, so why wouldn't it work for all of us, right? Just ask questions, but you can only ask intelligent questions if you know about the subject. And I know I've read peer-reviewed articles and thought, come out with different conclusions than the people who've written the articles or written the studies. And if you don't do that, you're not thinking critically, and you're just parroting what other people in your herd say. And it happens in libertarians too. There's factions of libertarians. It's like, how could you be more retarded?
Well, they've not been taught to think, Xavier. They, like millions, they've been taught what to think, but they're not taught how to think.
So we have to, right? We have to like get
That's
people.
where we're starting, right? We're just starting.
Yeah, like thank God for that one high school English teacher I had who walked in a room, and the first term she hadn't been there. We had a substitute who we loved in this English class. And we had written a petition to not have the actual teacher when she came back from a trip overseas where she was teaching for like 6 weeks or something. And so she came in and had this petition from her students saying they don't want her there. And she walks up to the board and she writes critical thinking. And for that whole term, she was talking about how to employ critical thinking into your life. And had that teacher not been in my life, and I ended up like loving that teacher more than any teacher I had in high school, pretty much, right? By the end of that term. But had she not been there, nobody else had even brought that idea up as a thing.
Wait, this was
you should question things. Like we had this whole canning jar lid thing going on last year where they were hard to get. Mm-hmm. And people explaining all these conspiratorial things that were wrong that might be. I called Ball. Yeah. And I said, so silly question, like, do you know when you're going to get lids and do you know why you don't have them? And they said, well, we've had 4 times the demand for them from January to July that we would in a whole year, the year before. And so we can't keep up with demand. That's it.
They have forecast for it. So
not because of tariffs on metal, just literally we can't keep up because this has not happened to us since the 70s.
Wow.
Nobody cared about glass jars before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Until their livelihoods are threatened and they're like, wait a minute, all those weird conspiracy people might actually be right.
Yeah, and it's not like I needed special permission to call a factory. I just had to ask the question, and I won't do that for everything, right? But in that one, so many people were asking me about it. So many people were making up redonkulous stories about Ball jar lids. But I was like, okay, I just want to know why, and I want to know how long.
Right.
It's really worth spending $2 a lid right now. No, actually, if I wait, they'll eventually come back.
Yeah.
I did the same thing, Nicole, with freezers. Because that was what pushed us out of the house, and we needed commercial space and we needed more freezers. And so as a side effect, I'm like, dude, I gotta get some freezers. Where's all the freezers? No freezers. You can't buy freezers. And I'm like, are they just not making appliances anymore? Like, what in the world is happening? I'm confused. What's going on? And they're like, nobody bought this many freezers ever in history in a 3-day period. And now we just sold out, and we just didn't even know we needed to make so many.
By the way, that's all going to get worse. It's not going to get better anytime soon. I'm sorry to say.
We had a break in the freezer market about 3 weeks ago. Prices came down to normal freezer prices because I just bought 2 because I wanted to replace my ice cream freezer with a chest freezer that's insulated, and I wanted an event. I have a fridge freezer combo now that's really cool. It can be a fridge or a freezer depending on what I need it to be, and I do events, so that's cool. And they were all like the prices they would have been about a year ago or a year and a half ago.
I got the price.
They arrived within 2 weeks of ordering.
Yeah. I have that going on, but I still can't get large chest freezers. If you see them,
How large?
I mean, like
27 cubic feet or more?
22 cubic square feet or more.
Oh yeah, that's what I got.
Everybody wants us to talk about John McAfee.
I know.
John McAfee didn't kill himself.
Okay, I got nothing beyond that. You, Neethi?
Is this the guy with 2 bullets in his head like everybody else?
No, hung himself from a doorknob in prison.
Yeah, this just came out this afternoon, so you probably haven't heard about it necessarily.
Yeah,
working at your CSA world. Yeah. McAfee, he created, I believe, he's the CEO behind, I don't know, his role, Norton Antivirus Software. Yeah, apparently he's dead, and I agree, John McAfee didn't kill him.
But he was a big guy and very anarchist and very anarcho-capitalist, very like damn the man, fuck the empire, all of that, and has notoriously said many times that he will never commit suicide, and that he said, he tweeted, if he ever is found hanging from a doorknob, it was not him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. For the record, I'm not ever going to commit suicide either. Okay, friends?
Yeah, same.
Same.
You know what? If I was terminally ill and in a lot of pain, I might do it at that moment. But otherwise, yeah.
But I would do it creatively.
Hemlock might be involved. I don't know. We'll see. Still doing research.
Random story you just triggered. I actually, as an EMT, rolled up at a camp where some kid was literally trying to kill themselves with hemlock because they saw that Socrates who was killed with hemlock tea. Anyway, some famous Greek philosopher, I'm pretty sure it was Socrates, was killed with hemlock tea. And so they got this bright idea that they were going to eat hemlock flowers and die. And like, that's not how it works. You have to like really, synthesize it and really boil it down and get like a decoction and stuff. So they got really upset and were really sad that they were doing it and they didn't want to halfway through. And I started laughing at them, and it wasn't necessarily appropriate, but it was like, I knew that you couldn't, die from like eating, even like a bushel of flowers. And so I was comforting them with that and the laughter, and they, of course, they survived. But yeah, hemlock is a creative way.
I've been reading all about it lately.
Yeah, I will never do that. But so
I was like, if you don't have access to things, what is hemlock good for besides killing somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it has a narcotic effect.
Yeah,
it's kind of like playing with fire to eat.
Yeah, they got messed up. They were like delirious and like, woo,
Yeah. And the way it's supposed to kill you, if you have enough of it, is it shuts down your nervous system and you stop breathing.
That's right. So as agorists, we know a lot about herbs and plants. But it's good. I think each one of you are very curious in your own way. And again, I think that's a trait that marks agorists. Libertarians are not necessarily curious, they're opinionated, right? And like we're like the opposite of opinionated. We might have opinions on things and we might strongly voice those and the logic behind them to the degree that we can, incorporating all of the clever feelings and nonverbal communication, but ultimately we're curious. And I sort of am thinking of Jack right now, because like if somebody came on with an opinion and couldn't back it up, he would totally destroy them, right? So I think that that's also like another aspect to this. If you know what you're talking about and you speak with authority, then people tend to listen, right?
Yeah. Although Jack sometimes chooses not to destroy people publicly.
No.
I've watched him do it where he's like, okay, I wasn't going to say anything, but man.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I like you keep saying curiosity, Xavier, and that's true. Like, this is something that I don't think a lot of people are really focused on.
Well, we are bipedal, semi-crystalline hominids on a planet that is a molten core with spinning around at 65,000 miles an hour, flying through space through hundreds of thousands of miles an hour around an ongoing nuclear explosion. We are so like tenuous and tiny in this whole thing. What the F do we really know, right? And if I'm going through this big humbling experience recently, and it's teaching me that I might know some things that I think I know about, but really, like if you really boil it down, like, why do I have two arms? Like, you can really deconstruct this whole thing and be like, I know nothing. I've figured out how to survive and thrive in this environment, but what do I really know?
The longer I live, I learn I don't know anything at all.
Yeah. That's why it's not so like gut wrenching when you're wrong, right? You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why we don't care. Like, there's nothing that serious going on, and it's always just fun to learn. Oh, we were wrong about that. Okay, that's cool. It's good to know. And there's some other thing there going on.
So how do we, Nicole, if you were to make a marketing strategy for agorism, how would you do that? Niti, for you as well, too.
I would come up with the three.
Remember, most people are stupid.
Yeah, I know. The three most important core values, and really there's probably only one, which is leave me alone, but find a more decorative way to say that.
Uh-huh.
None of my business is another one. If I sat in a room of agorists, we'd probably come up with fancier words.
Probably some quirky stuff too.
Then I'd find emotional stories that just convey those messages over and over and over, that make it less threatening for people to learn about people who are just living their lives, to reinforce that not everything has to be your business, that somebody else is doing, right?
And
if you look, it's funny, if you look at children's books like 100 years ago, they kind of did that. That may be why, or more like 80 years ago, 100 years ago.
What do you have
go read the Bobbsey twins, read through the racially uncomfortable things that will be in there, and you've got these kids that go out and solve their own problems and help people, and they don't ask permission, they just do it.
Not biopsy twins, Bobbsey.
Bobbsey twins. There's the different authors. It was sort of like this concept.
I'll see if I can find it for you, the Bobbsey twins.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And there's a whole, I don't remember who went into this, but there's a whole school of thought about, if you look at the popular fairy tales, 50 years from there is when you have either more freedom or less freedom based on the necessity for a fairy godmother or something to intervene. That's setting the foundation for, I need magic from the government.
Wow.
Versus if the fairy tale is about somebody, just as a story about somebody solving their own problem.
Just put a link in there for you.
So you're saying there's a correlation between the amount of fantasy fiction with like an external savior based upon how free that society or culture is? Yeah,
and I will have to go like dig deeply, because I was really fascinated by this probably 10 or 15 years ago. I was like, we need to be not just writing children's stories about monetary systems, which is kind of boring, or how money works. And I don't want to actually dissuade whoever's doing that, because that's good. But
that's just
random Harry Potter-like stories that become popular. What's that setting the foundation for 50 years from now?
Interesting. I remember reading, not Charlie Brown, Detective Brown or something. Like, it was a young kid who would solve all these crimes and mysteries with his
exactly.
Intellect. That shit was brilliant.
And I'm not sure, I think, people think Harry Potter is setting us up for socialism. But if you look at the plot line, they're fighting
Racist.
just the Ministry of Magic and all that. But at the same time, they're like, the Ministry of Magic doesn't matter that much. I'm going to go do my thing, right? And those kids are solving their own problems.
Yeah.
I mean, we did when we were growing up. You know, like our parents were not involved. We were raising ourselves in that sense. You know, they were just like, go outside and play.
Yeah. Well, we're Gen X, right?
Get out of here.
Yeah.
And you know, also it was a common thing for people to say, mind your business. Mind your business.
Yeah. Mind your business. That's something we could use more of in this world.
Yeah, mind your business.
Or that's none of my business. Like sometimes I get all caught up in stuff. I'm like, wait a minute, Nicole, that's none of your business.
Right.
They ask for your help, but it's like none of your business.
Right. I mean, that's why I've started saying that a lot when I'm coaching and stuff too. I'm like, you know, you this is what you probably should do, but that's none of my business. That's between you and you.
Do you remember the 80s? There was like there was a show about kids that went missing like every night on television.
Like Unsolved Mysteries or something?
But it wasn't Unsolved Mysteries. It was like the title was something horrific, like Missing Children or some like weird shit.
Yeah.
And like there were like a spat of kids going missing or whatever. So I went missing, but I was over at a neighbor's house and I just didn't tell my parents. And like a hellstorm was unleashed. And then when my mom found me, she's an immigrant, right? She's a Lebanese woman. She found me and laid into me just like, bam, 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 like spanking me real hard. And like all the neighbors started gathering around and being like, you can't do that. And she literally turned on one of them, like with her finger in her face. And she's like, don't you dare tell me what I can and can't do with my child. You know, like
our parents did that all the time, and they would have.
I never went missing again. Just have to say.
I mean, our neighbors. I mean, my mom. I remember our parents used to have straight up screaming matches with anybody in the neighborhood who stepped out of line, and then also everybody went right back into, you know, being friends in the neighborhood all over again. Like, it was not a big deal. It was okay. Everybody, and we all used to make fun of each other for all of our crazy weirdnesses. And everybody knew they were going to make fun of you for your crazy, weird thing that you did. If that was something that you did, you know?
Yeah. I personally think, you know, like spankings and stuff, like it makes sense, especially for unruly people because they're not people yet. They're still like animals, right? As children, like we don't understand reason to a certain age. However, like as Gen X, I think we were all psychic, like to the sense that we knew we were effed. Like we knew that whatever came after us was like, that's why grunge and this despondency that everybody had, sort of like, well, we're fucked. So what are we going to do about it? You know, and just
having the fear of God in us, Xavier, our parents put into us. And me and my husband we were talking about this the other day. We're like, how did our parents do that? How do we put that in our kids?
Yeah.
They don't seem to have
responsibility. Like I was terrified. I am like so German about time. It's not even funny. And the cultural stereotype there is that I'm on time. I'm a little early so that I'm on time most of the time. And that comes from my upbringing. Somehow my parents made me just terrified of being late. And if you say we're leaving, I get my butt out the door like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Now I watch people who are leaving and I'm like, when I see you by my car, I'll get ready to go because you're still going to go inside one more time. And I even forget stuff and go back in one more time, but I'm out.
Yeah.
Like, let's say clothes, you know, wallet, shoes. Okay, out.
Yeah.
Bottle of water, done.
And I think this social media thing has really messed up a lot of young people. Like this whole idea of microaggressions and all these other things. Like Jordan Peterson had a podcast recently where he said, you're supposed to give disappointment like you're supposed to voice your displeasure at behaviors that are not becoming of a young person or a growing person. And these days, if you do that, if they're not raised properly or they're too socialized in the social media world with triggers and, you know, microaggressions, like I had been accused of being abusive when it's really just like, no, this is proper. You need to learn how to be proper. And if you're making a mistake, you have to be shown that you're making a mistake. You can't like,
well, you have to parent, you know, you have to parent and you're not supposed to, I mean, I refuse to apologize for parenting my children. I refuse I refuse to apologize for, I would sooner break my child's heart than let you break their heart. Okay. I will sooner do that myself. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
And
because you're there to hold them.
right. I mean, nobody loves them more than I do, and they know that. I'm reading these notes in YouTube, and I agree. Like I was a latchkey kid. They're saying that latchkey kids in our generation were left to their own devices. True, we were. And it says that, I mean, my mom was raising us and stuff, but then she became a single mom, and then so we became latchkey kids. And
That's 100% why I know what happens if you put metal in a microwave and turn the microwave on.
Because you did it.
right. Also, we know what it's like when the neighbor across the street's daughter decides to get our key that she's holding for emergencies and come into our house. And me and my sister get scared, and we get a hammer and we stand behind the door and get ready to hit somebody because they're coming in our house and we don't know why.
Yeah.
Almost got her.
Good thing you didn't.
I know, it was kind of crazy. They did a story on us on the news about it, actually, like, hello, you might want to tell your kids not to go into their neighbor's house without.
So Gen X, basically what we're saying, has the highest survivability rate of the apocalypse.
That's what they say. I don't know for 100% sure, but yeah.
Gen Z and millennials,
The same children are
Well, I
not.
kind of think Gen Z is going to go freedom again.
Yeah, right. Like everybody rebels against whatever the status quo is to a degree, and I think it's too soft, and they're realizing that, and they're going to be at the prime age to have to fix it.
Well, they're also they're saying fuck this and opting out.
Yeah.
Already. Like when you see the ones who are older who can, they're just like, I'm not staying at this dead end job. I'm going to go live my life, and that sets the once somebody starts doing that.
Yeah.
Freedom. And they're willing to be uncomfortable.
They're more entrepreneurial for sure.
Mm-hmm.
They grew up in the gig economy.
Yeah. So they're saying that the biggest problem is kids have no sense of privacy or how to respect privacy.
I don't know that is a problem. I think that
they have too much privacy.
No, there is no privacy doesn't exist anymore. The idea of privacy is a fallacy at this point. Like we can do things to try to make ourselves feel good about being private, but literally there is no, that ended like late 90s, early 2000s.
Are you talking about because of social media? Is that what this means?
Yeah, digital privacy. Like they're more easily to talk to a random stranger. They have like an innate trust of other humans to a greater degree than we ever had, right? Like they know that there are predators and weird things, but they also have like the signals to know who is and who isn't for the most part, right? Because there's a great degree of socialization and things that we'd have had to take many different tribes, many different generations to learn. They're learning now because they're getting the information from across the world and spreading it together. Like during COVID, the highest degree of conspiratorial alternative history thinking kind of exploration took place. And now you bring up like Atlantis and everybody's like, oh yeah, crystal this, that, giants power. Like they already know all of this stuff. And like, so a sort of cultural basis or baseline has been generated. And that has to do with socialization. It has to do with like immediate trust. Like people get on Omegle and like they realize that they have no privacy anymore. So they've got nothing to hide really. Like they know that a screen name is just is a thin veneer of protection, at least the smart ones. And so, you know, they have an openness that we never did.
Yeah, I think the bigger problem is fear of things you don't really need to fear.
Yeah.
Taught people to really need security and safety. And I like being safe, but just fear of things you can't control and that you don't need to be afraid of is a big deal. And it's how it's how you see the narrative controlling people, right? Even just starting with what the news cycle's covering, whatever it is right now, in addition to McAfee, there's fear underlying it. And I can't stop reading the articles about whatever the, topic du jour is. And the fear of that controls me here, even though whatever that is not here.
It's like, why do people watch horror movies? I don't understand why anybody would watch a horror movie. You're literally sitting for an hour and a half, 2 hours being traumatized. you know.
I don't
And-
understand it either. My husband and his sister watch them, and I cannot. I have no idea what.
No, and I used to take kids on. My first company was an adventure company. I used to take people out on backpacking trips and camping trips and hiking trips, and the amount over even then there was a lot of horror movies, but even then, like the amount of people going into the woods and just being shit terrified for no good reason, but because they saw a movie with like Jason or somebody, you know, hunting them in the woods. It's like the irrational fears that are implanted in people are preventing them from actually being, like we said, curious or trying to learn or be present.
I mean, that was on purpose, right? So that's the problem.
Perhaps
that was all happening on purpose, because even right now, I mean, this fear that you're talking about from the news for the, you know, the virus or for anything, is because people won't leave their house to see what's actually happening for reals on the outside, where nobody's dropping dead. Like everybody's not dropping dead. So, but they don't know that because they haven't been outside because they're afraid. So they're trained to sit tight inside and hide under their bed. And if they come out, they only come out to yell at you to go, because they really should just be hiding under their bed. At that point.
Hiding under the bed's very important. Bye, Xavier. That means somebody just interrupted and they'll be back. You know, it's funny because the whole virus thing, I've been just kind of keeping a personal tally of how many people I know who died of it versus how many died linked to the stick. And right now it's 2 of the virus and 1 of the stick for a total of 3.
I know
in my network. So
How are
it's something to keep
so my question is, how are they
0 to 4 virus to stick, 4 sticks, 0.
Yeah.
How are they proving it is what I'm still trying to find out, since it's never been isolated.
Yeah, I don't know. I take it as they died of the virus if they got really sick and their oxygen dropped and they died. The respiratory death, I don't know. Like if somebody had advanced heart failure and were in the ICU already and then got it, I don't really count those, but I don't think I have any of those either of people I know. But from the stick, if it's within a day or 2 of the stick and they were perfectly healthy, I'll accept that link.
I already know 4.
Especially heart stuff.
I know 4 people from that. 3 are gone.
Yeah. It's not a study, obviously, but it's something to keep track of.
My observation.
Mm-hmm.
My observation.
Observation's not good enough anymore.
I mean, they told me I was a scientist because I could observe. That's what my teacher told me.
So Jack's not on the show, but he commented in YouTube. He says, "Seems to me it's not the kids losing their shit about names, etc." I think he means PC language. Mostly seems to be 30-somethings. Yeah.
What does that mean? The 30-somethings are what?
Losing their shit about you have to call people the right words and the words change all the time.
Oh,
I'm assuming
I'm
that's
not gonna do that, y'all. Sorry, because I can't even remember. I can't remember your weird words. I mean, like, I don't know.
We had a funny conversation about like how somebody wanted to explain to their elderly mother what PC culture was. And they tried to explain using the proper word for a person of color. And they finished the conversation. Their mom's like, "Wait, which word am I supposed to use?" And that was all that permeated.
I refuse to make an effort to learn this because I walk in the laws of nature. So y'all can just hate me for it. Sorry, but you know.
My preferred pronouns are.
Jack told us there's 74 genders or something. He said, I was like, what? 47, 74? What did he say? Something like that. A lot more than the 2 that I know about, but I don't know. Anyway.
He's saying, wait till you see the data I have on vaccine death pulled right out of VAERS, VAERS. Report will be out tomorrow. I saw something interesting.
By the way, you can't report to VAERS about the jab because this is an emergent. You're allowing them to get you because this is emergently being dispersed, untested or whatever. I mean, none of them have been tested. Let's just be clear, okay? But these people are not able to have any recourse through vaccine court. So because it's emergent, no one's liable for it. No one was really liable for any of it before. but you had an opportunity to go to the vaccine court. But like, and if you lost, like our daughter was vaccine murdered, so there was no recourse for that. No recourse for that. Also, good luck trying to prove any of it anyway, as far as they're concerned. But yeah.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just was reminded of a conversation that happened just an hour ago before.
Sounded really important though.
Yes. So I read an article where somebody killed a cop, and they got them on a screenshot, but they didn't get their face. They got like this much of them, right? Just the shirt, and they could do Google reverse search on the shirt, found out the Etsy maker who made the shirt, went and got all of their records, found out who, they narrowed it down, and then targeted and got the individual who did the murder or whatever it was.
They lucky that he bought a shirt or she on Etsy.
But look at the amount of effort they put into doing that.
Yeah.
But it was because one of their own were targeted and a victim. I've had a gun stolen from me a long time ago, and they did not put an iota of the same amount of effort into finding the culprit. Right? Detectives whose job it is to, you know, uncover and stop crimes and find out who committed them, did not put the same amount of effort. If that does not indicate to you the exact role government and all of these kind of organizations play, it's not, they don't work for you. You just pay them to work doing other things. And so this is like
do what they want.
Yeah. So like somebody who's like, oh, agorism, whatever, why would I even, it's like you can use stories as well to indicate, but then follow it up with, do you think that they would do the same amount of effort for you if your child was stolen, if your car was stolen? And let them ruminate on that. If you don't think that they would, then why are you supporting them? Why are you not figuring out your own systems of protection or discovering, theft and crimes? Like when I had my Bitcoin hacked, I didn't go to the police. I knew that there was nothing that they could do. I knew that the FBI couldn't do anything. Who did I go to? I went to hackers who could actually trace back these people, who I could offer a percentage of whatever we recovered, right? So like at the very most fundamental core foundation of this, and I think that Gen Z gets this, is that you're looking out for yourself. And if you don't figure out how to game the system and figure out the ways to extract wealth from the surrounding ecosystem and bring it to yourself to survive and thrive, nobody's going to do it for you. And I think Jack was saying something about the 20 to 30 somethings or the Karens, and it's sort of like, yeah, they grew up the softies and like, oh, I need a safe space to process my victimization or whatever. So I think
their victimhood mentality,
alone time to process stuff.
The victimhood mentality is exhausting.
Yeah. Well, and when it's also something, we all fall into sometimes, like the poor me. But when I make it a point when I hear myself poor meing, it's like, okay, put your big girl panties on and figure out what you're going to do next, right? Because this isn't going to help you being the victim at all.
And that's the agorist thing, that we're not waiting for somebody to come save us or console us, or because we were outside riding bikes, 8 and 12 and 15 miles a day or more than that, or in one direction, and our tire would blow out and we'd have to drag that frame all the way home. It wasn't a light bike, it was heavy. And rubber on the tires was heavy too.
You knew how to patch a tire.
Dude, we had to carry that thing all the way back 14 miles to get it home. And
that's how tough you are, Neethi. Like, you had one of the biggest and most profound losses in your life, and you're like, that's on us. There's nobody that's accountable. And you own it, and like you're like, well, we have to carry on. Like, it's pain and it's suffering and it's unimaginable. Like, I can't imagine what would happen if I did, but like, we take accountability for ourselves and we learn from our mistakes, as difficult as they are, knowing that if it's going to be better tomorrow, it's going to be by our efforts. Of course, grace is involved. Of course, miracles happen, but it's like we are responsible for our well-being and our state of mind and our, success.
I just started working with this doctor who's a functional medicine specialist, and they look at what you're doing with stress in your life, how your sleep is going, and other things. They analyze a lot of things. They will make dietary recommendations, those sorts of things. So they try to fix the underlying problem rather than mask the symptom, which is why I was willing to try the person. And when he explained his process to me, one of the things he said is, I will recommend treatment, and then you choose what you want to do because you're the driver in your healthcare. As if that was a new profound thing. And I was like, I've always been the driver in my healthcare, but a lot of people don't realize that. They go to the doctor and the doctor says, take this thing, and they take this thing. Ultimately, you're in charge there too. They just try to make it seem like you're stupid if you don't do what they say. And that's not necessarily true. I've had them totally misdiagnosed, and I can tell, it's not strep throat that's the problem. So I'm not going to, or whatever. That's just an example I made up. They'd probably have a test for that. But I can tell that what they say is wrong isn't wrong.
What about this? I'm going to ask a broad question. Like, if vaccine passports or vaccines were mandated, right? Like, either get it or go to jail, or if somebody force vaccinates you, would you capitulate and get a paper? Would you forge it? Lie? I don't know what I would do in that regard.
I still don't know either. I've thought about that some, because there are things where papers are being asked for. Morally, I don't think I should ever have to show my papers whether or not I have one. And so far, that's where I've stuck. And it's also kind of silly because getting a forgery ain't hard. But if I don't lie about it, I also don't get in trouble for lying about it. There's that. But it's really hard for me to want to forge a vaccine passport.
Yeah, I mean, you can't travel in Europe without one now.
Already?
Yep.
Told you not to poop on me. Going to Europe. From what I understand, Xavier, they can put
you just got pooped on by a bird.
They can put a quarter on your body and it'll stick and they'll know. So,
I don't know about that shit. Like, I've seen videos and I'm like, come on, like that just doesn't seem right.
I don't know about that part. I don't really know. But what I know is that there is tech involved, and supposedly, and I don't have any evidence for all you people, and don't write Jack and bother him with all of this. Okay.
No, they'll write me, Nikki. They write me.
Or Nicole or anybody, but I've already seen some video of some folks tracking some other people, who supposedly got the stick. So
that too, I'm like, I don't know, like that it was in Russian.
I don't know, because that this
there's a lot of weird shit going around, and I don't know that it's all like innocent people just trying to play a prank. I think that there's some like legitimate stoking of the fears.
But
yeah, I think if
the whole reason the whole reason people wanted mandatory vaccination, the reason it was being pushed for was not for safety. Why don't I just say that only? Then you guys can figure out what would be the real reason. Y'all figure it out. You tell me. Because I don't know nothing. And obviously you need evidence from me for everything.
I think some of these things are above our pay grade. Like, if we're going to think critically and you see things that kind of fall into what you kind of think of the vaccine, or I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to say that word on video, the stick. Well, now I'm going to get us banned from YouTube.
What did you say?
I said the word I wasn't supposed to say, but if you want to be thinking critically and something falls into your own narrative that you've come to by looking at other things critically, you still have to say, how do I verify that? Even if you think it makes sense, because it might not, and it might be being used as a tool to manipulate people who are critical of the stick.
That's classic COINTELPRO and disinformation. Like, they will take something like 9/11, and that could very well just be planes flying into the towers and be like, oh, it's Project Blue Beam holograms, satellite beamed in, and tactical nukes, and it's just made to make anybody who questions the narrative and that's thinking critically seem crazy. Oh, you're one of those people.
Yeah.
They'll put out information that takes it to the extreme. That's why I think this magnetic shit is weird. That's why I think this, like, oh, I'm now putting off a Bluetooth signal and I can track my buddies. Like, I think that this is a little bit over the top, and we got to think critically, stand in the middle, be still, and be like, who's trying to push what agenda and what polarization is there?
I will say that I know from people who work in the manufacturing industry of the
Jab.
jab, that it is gene therapy, and we know that for verified sure. Also, I know that the the a violation. How about not violation? How about when you're interfering with your sacred bloodstream? I know for sure that is not strengthening immunity. I know that for sure. That's all I know.
That's all you know.
That's all I do know. And I know that if you want to strengthen immunity, that it requires you to honor the law of nature and not the law of a man who makes money, who isn't even in that medical profession, but is in more of a tech profession, and also maybe who is also in a vegan agenda profession, investor, maybe.
By the way, Xavier, who's your friend on your shoulder
I
there?
know.
The bird on Xavier's
You have
shoulder
a feathered friend.
who pooped on him earlier and it made him mad.
This is Soleil. She's she likes grabbing onto my earrings and doing her morning workout on she does like pull-ups on my earrings. She knows she's on camera now. Hi. That's Soleil.
Hi, Soleil.
Hello.
She's done. She's giving us the single bird.
I can see something.
So I saw somebody asking in the YouTube about if freedom cells are an FBI trap or whatever.
I don't know. Those guys seem kind of shady to me.
I mean, John Bush is a goose, so he's doing a good job if he is. The cool thing about freedom cells is it sets up networks and it's centered around building true community based on trust and real relationships. And we need them. And so much of our community is manufactured. We are told which school to send our kids to if we buy into that. We are told we are divided by geography. We are divided by political opinion. We are put into groups by race. We are put into groups by income level, by professions, by the sports we choose to do. And the cool thing about freedom cells is we're putting ourselves into a group of people who want to be part of a community that develops trust and relationships. Before we started this show, I talked to Neethi about something that happened because a lot of people get into the freedom cells and they're like, what do you do next? Mm-hmm. And the answer is you get together and get to know people and you learn about each other. You find reasons to go do projects together, to hang out, to go learn things, whatever it is that interests your immediate group. If you hear other groups are doing interesting things, you go to their freedom cell gatherings and you gather. And this is why. This is an example of why. Someday you're going to need the network. Yeah. And a community with trust is a community that will help. Neethi advises people on nutrition. And one of the things she wants when she's prescribing a meat solution is regeneratively grown meat. Do you know how hard it is to find that in some places, especially for somebody who's never heard of it before? Neethi sent one email to the community and said, hey, do you know anybody who will do this? And as a result of that email, like the whole quote unquote freedom cell opened up and this person has access within what, a week?
Less. 2 days. I think it took
2 days to pasture raised healthy eggs, no soy in the feed, regenerative meat, all of these things in a state that Neethi doesn't live in, just because she had that one connection over the border. And when we talk about freedom cells or in building community, that's what we mean by mutual aid. It doesn't mean necessarily we'll come and put your house back together if it burns down. Sometimes it's just knowing where to get the frickin' beef.
Two things. So, I was being cheeky by saying that they're shady just because they did that to me in the very beginning because of my website. And they're great folks, and I love them a lot. And in fact, I've been trying to support different ways of that. But
I took it sarcastically when you said it anyway.
Yeah, good. And then Neethi, would you be interested in cattle produced like instead of raising them to 1 year old and killing them like most, they raise them to 3 to give them a full quality of life. Totally like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres, free roaming, completely organic, totally regenerative agriculture. One of the most well-established beef cattle farms, and they do like a monthly subscription where they'll ship it to you. Is that some? I can.
We do that too. Who is it?
It's one of I don't want to say it publicly just yet because
yeah. Well, we can talk because that's what we're doing. That's the farms that I'm working with.
Yeah,
like I prefer the beef be raised. First of all, the USDA says that if you process an animal after 30 months, then you're gonna lose the whole spine and you're gonna lose all the stuff because of mad cow disease, which is totally laughable. Are you saying that if a beef is over 30 months old, that now it's more susceptible to mad cow when the cause of mad cow was you feeding cows meat and they're herbivores? So no, it's just a joke. And grass-fed, grass-finished beef is not actually going to marble beautifully until it's over 36 months old. And
I put you in touch with these folks. They're right up your alley.
I would love to know them. Yes.
This person is saying on YouTube, I'm moving to Montana and tired of being a state slave. How do you get from ordinary life to low tax complicity? I think the man said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, but if you're smart about it, you don't have to render up too much.
Yeah, somebody did mention we've done whole shows on that, and I'm sure we will again. And it's kind of near the end of our show time-wise, so I'm wondering if
look in some of our
we
older
need to punt that one to the next show.
Maybe we'll get Jack to do a full episode on tax. Well,
if only Jack Spear had interviewed somebody who runs a business called agristaxadvice.com today on the Survival Podcast.
Did he really?
He did. Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, so go to survivalpodcast.com and look at today's episode. It's all about taxes and maximizing your write-offs, I guess is probably the best way to say that. Legal.
I'm going to go listen to that one today.
Yeah, do. And it is agristaxadvice.com is that guy's website, because I happen to know that person. So, yeah.
agristaxadvice.com.
This is not advice saying you should hire him. I'm just saying go check out his website and decide what you want.
I'm going to hire him.
Yeah. I want to talk to him. I know some people who he needs to talk to.
Dang it, I needed to get an affiliate link. No, just kidding. I think this has been a really fun conversation. It's about time to wrap up. I'm going to want to go once around the horn. But somebody just wrote something in the YouTube chat that's pretty cool as a wrap up to the whole episode. It's beautiful. And it's from this person. It says, it seems like if we could help each other change our lives, that it would be more effective than spreading the message.
Boom. That's brilliant. Thank you, this person.
Drop the mic.
Yeah. Mic drop. So let's go around. I'll start with you, Xavier, and I go to Neethi and say anything else you want to say on this episode.
This has been a very special edition of Unloose the Goose. My name is Xavier Hawk. You can find me on all of the platforms except for Twitter because they suck, at xavierhawk.com. And our website is Phiron, Phireon.com, where you can find the app where we're going to build the socioeconomic governance system where we can steer Spaceship Earth together.
Neethi.
Hi, I'm Neethi Bali. You can find me, I guess I'm most active on Instagram right now because I don't really like everybody else. And then other people are just blocking me, but I am Neethi the Pharmacist everywhere. And that's TheFarmacist, the Pharmacist. Also, you could go to my website, www.farm2forkmeatriot.org. And that is FarmToForkMeatriot.org. I'm also, by the way, going to start doing some group coaching as of August 1st, if anybody's interested, and you'll be able to learn more about that on my website. So check it out. I'm working on uploading all that right now.
Awesome. And I'm Nicole Sauce from the Living Free in Tennessee podcast and Hollow Roast Coffee. Check out my podcast if you want to hear more from me. I do anything from homesteading to freedom-related issues. But more importantly, if you love Unloose the Goose and want to keep us growing, recommend us to friends. We live stream on YouTube, but we also have an audio podcast that goes out every Thursday, which is the audio from this video. And you can find all of our stuff at unloosethegoose.com. Thanks everybody for joining in.